All right, and we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian. I'm here with Allison, and this is Maintaining Frame. I know there was no intro. Something's going on with my OBS, but it's okay. I just jumped. I'm jumping right in. Now we're going to talk about, well, it's just called we're talking about sex bots. We're not actually going to be talking about sex bots that much.
Sort of. We're
So,
sort of going to be talking about sex bots.
I mean, sort of,
Sort
but
of.
not, it's not the purpose of the show. So, we're going to continue to go through this paper which seems to suggest that we're all going to land on sex bots as the solution. Um,
Mm.
I mean that's what it seems to be pointing to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one very strong possibility to take from this particular paper. But of course, we're going to be looking at the possibility that the paper is not correct. You might as well say the name of it so that people, just to
Yep,
remind everyone, this is like how many of these have we done? 4?
I think this is like the fourth one or fifth.
Yeah, 4th or 5th going through this paper. So
Yep,
yeah, just give us the title and the author
yeah. The
so that
title.
they
This
can
is a
situate
paper.
themselves in the context.
Yeah, this is a paper from Cambridge.org, so Cambridge University Press, and it is entitled "Toward Individualistic Reproduction: Solving the Fertility Crisis Could Require a Further Marginalization of Men."
Mm.
Put together by Mads Larson, Leif Edward Ottesen Kinnear, and Marianne L. Fisher. And we have been basically going through this for multiple shows. I think right now we are at the male marginalization and demotivation chapter. That's where
Mm-hmm.
we left off. So we're getting to the point now
Yeah.
where it's like, okay, so what's going on with the boys now that we've determined that women just aren't finding men that are good enough? Okay, we have that information now. What do we do with it? What's the solution?
Mm.
That's
Yeah.
basically
What,
where
what are
we're
we
at.
gonna what are we gonna approach? How are we gonna approach this issue of falling birth rates
Yeah,
without questioning any
seems
any sacred cows?
seems
God forbid
important.
we question. Yeah.
Yeah,
Forbid we question any sacred cows, any academic sacred cows. That would get us a visit from the feminist mob if we ever were to
true.
even suggest it. But anyway, so I'm going to suggest if you would like to feel up some sacred cows, you can
Or what?
send that your what?
Sacred feel up. Did you say feel up some sacred cows?
Yes, I did.
Okay. All right. I'm just making sure I heard what I heard.
you can you can send those comments to feedthebadger.com/just the tip. Very best way for you to send us a tip or your tip, and the very best way for you to send us a comment because your comment does not run YouTube's comment hunger games, shall we speak? Shall we say? So once again, that's feedthebadger.com/just the tip. And if you want to support the show because we are in our last week of making sure that we can continue to bring you this content, please go to feedthebadger.com/support and throw a few shekels in the hat for Brian, myself, Hannah, and HBR generally, so that again we can continue to do this work, which I think we're pretty much it. I keep hedging it like there could be no, we're it. We're pretty much the only ones who approach these things the way that we do. And I think that's really critical because
Hmm.
I am pro male. I believe the solution will come from recognizing the issues that men face. I don't mean just like helping men. At this point, it's helping society. When men have a problem, society has a problem. And if we don't recognize those problems, we can't fix the problems that society has. And there are a lot of them, and a lot that are going to be coming visible in the next few years. So anyway, if you want to support that message, go to feedthebadger.com/support. It really is up to you guys because no one else is gonna get behind our message.
No.
You are our sponsors. So feedthebadger.com/support to make sure that we can continue this. And badgernation.online if you want to join us in our community and learn more about the frameworks I use and you can ask questions, at least of me. You can also ask questions of the other badgers, but I don't think, they're busy, so they may not respond. I'm also busy, but I can usually stop and respond to questions. So anyway, badgernation.online to talk to us. And yeah, so let's
All right. Well,
let's
I
do
did.
it.
Yeah, let's do it. I got a super chat right at the top of the show, so I'm going to read it out and then we'll
Okay.
jump in. So Dylan gave us $5 super chat and said, I have one of those. I have one of these real dolls. They are very expensive and take a long time to make. Mine took 1.5 years to make. Well, I don't know what
Yeah.
to tell you, but um, okay, there you go then.
Okay.
All right, so
They
now let's
exist.
get into the article. Yes, they
They're
are
being
real.
rolled out.
Okay, male marginalization and demotivation. Even if a further individualization of reproduction makes sense, the downside for some groups of men could be considerable. All right, let me pause it there. Some groups of men. I actually think it's going to be most men, and I think the paper even acknowledges this at the top that if this goes through, because women are only picking, if they're only interested in the very highest like levels of men, the most high status man, whatever, best genetics, whatever it is, right? Which I think that's what they're doing. I mean, that was yeah. Anyway, then to say some groups of men is a bit misleading because it's going to be the overwhelming majority of men, like
Yeah.
the
It's
majority.
the proposal is going to increase the number of men who lose out.
Yes.
And it'll reduce the number of men. I mean, honestly, this is an interesting goal, but it's going to reduce the number of men who quote unquote win to the men who think that winning is just sexual extraction, hitting and quitting it. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure why we want a society like that, or what good thing we think is going to come out of having all women breed with sociopaths and narcissists. But yeah, okay, so yeah, we're going to be rapidly devolving the species because again, the men who will not be disenfranchised by this will be the guys who don't have they're not going to offer provision, right? They never were. They have no interest in being custodial towards their families in that way. They have no interest in a long-term relationship with a woman or paying her bills, right? So that they will just they'll engage with these women sexually and that's it. And again, that's going to mean that we're selecting for men with personality disorders. So we're going to have this is going to be our utopian future, guys. It is going to be all the children of single mothers by personality disordered men. My prediction is
Well,
that we will be at about chimp level in about 4 generations.
it's definitely going to get
We'll
us
lose the
closer to
ability to use language.
that brave new world future, maybe. I
Yeah,
mean, where if everybody's going to be born in test tubes and stuff.
yeah. I
Um,
don't know if that doesn't seem to be where it's going. Where it's going is that the male taxpayer should basically just work for the state. So you guys you're going to be like 110% tax. They'll also take maybe an organ to put on the market as well occasionally. You don't need 2 kidneys or 2 lungs.
yeah.
But anyway, so they'll just take all of your money, and again, maybe an organ or two. You don't need both. Men don't need their full set of organs. What kind of entitlement? Aren't you recovering from your loss of privilege? You deserve 2 kidneys. And then they're just going to use all of that money, give it to women. And of course, men are going to be completely unattractive as partners because get this, women's standards for men's income has gone up over the last 50 years. I've been looking
Yeah.
at the General Social Survey. Yeah, their standards have gone up. So women want men with higher incomes than they did like 50 years ago.
Mm,
So when this happens, there will be Well, you know what? Probably it will just be the middle class men. I'm guessing the financial extractors who are closest to the government tit, or part of the too big to fail complex that socializes as losses, will probably be able to continue to attract women. But every other guy who works for a living won't, because his money will immediately go to the government to pay for single mothers. And of course, because he makes nothing, what's he going to attract a woman with, huh? His cinder block government apartment? Right? No, no, no. So this is basically going to disenfranchise every damn man, except for the ones who are perfectly happy just hitting and quitting it with women. The do he fuck good types.
Yep.
And yeah, that's quite a so we're looking at this will be like the end to 99% of all men having any real investment in society. Now, the unspoken assumption by this paper is that under circumstances like that, men will continue to invest in society. And of course, the reason why, I mean, I don't say that the guy who, or the people who wrote this paper are saying the reason why men will continue to invest in society, but but my guess is they'll continue, or they're expected to continue to invest in society, because if they didn't, that would be entitlement. So you men will have to continue to labor because it would be entitlement to expect to have any take-home income that doesn't go to single mothers. It would be entitlement to expect that maybe you should have access to the possibility of forming a family, or even support a system that doesn't undermine your value constantly as a partner to women. That's entitlement. So all of your rights are entitlements. Okay? And when you understand that, you will continue to labor placidly for the state. I
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, let's.
All right.
This doesn't sound very utopian, but okay.
No, no. I don't. Well, anyway,
Okay.
after
Yeah.
decades of men losing out financially relative to women, additional female economic empowerment could lead to even greater male marginalization. Yeah, I think it's already happening, both in terms of sexual and romantic exclusion, as well as the negative psychological impact downstream from such exclusion. The sexual economics framework of Baumeister and Vos emphasizes how men historically obtain sexual or romantic access through the provision of resources. If women gain further increases in economic independence, this reduces the relative importance of male provided resources, so that men whose utility is tied to provisioning would be expected to experience an additional decline in mate value. More generous government support to women wanting to solo parent would thus further reduce some men's utility to women, which could lead to even more men being excluded from intimacy, love, fatherhood, and family life. Deprivations that likely cause male marginalization across many social and economic indicators. Yeah, it sounds awful. I mean, yes, it sounds awful.
Well, if we
But
considered, like,
what?
we considered the plight of the men, it would
Yeah,
sound awful.
yeah. Well, I mean, they are. They're not realizing this. There is a lot of like weird language, like for example, um, I mean, I guess you have to use this kind of language, but it says here, let's see. If women gain further increases in economic independence, this reduces the relative importance of male provided resources, so that men whose utility is tied to provisioning would be expected to experience an additional decline in mate value. Right? More generous government support to women wanting to solo parent would thus further reduce some men's utility to women, which could lead to even more men being excluded from intimacy, love, fatherhood, and family life. Right? So
Yeah.
maybe it's just being really clinical, but it doesn't sound like it's saying this is a bad thing. It sounds like
Yeah, it
it's
could be just being
saying,
clinical.
yeah, it's like just being kind of clinical, maybe. It's either, I mean, if I'm being say charitable, and I'm going to try to be charitable.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I
I mean,
I guess yeah, go ahead.
on its face, it's basically presenting something that sounds very dystopian. I mean, if you consider the plight of men. I know
Yeah.
that that's not really something we consider because
Well,
ever since radfems won the fight, or actually they just won the fight against the Marxist feminists, we have considered men to be the source of evil into the world. So, yeah, I guess considering the plight of men is just patriarchal false consciousness, being a pick me, right? Protecting your privilege, Brian,
yeah.
all of that stuff. How dare
Well,
we
it
be
does
so
it
regressive?
I do wonder, maybe they think that because men obtained romantic or sexual access through the provision of resources to women, I wonder if the authors are thinking, and again, I don't want to put words in their mouths or anything like that, but I wonder if they're not thinking that as long as men, like, do they believe that if a man thinks that his resources are going to women somewhere, like in the abstract, that that's going to be good enough for him? Like, he's basically saying, oh, well, I'm being taxed all of my money and I'm given basically just enough to survive on, but I guess that means I'm making the world a better place because somewhere my money is like helping somebody else raise their kids. Like, is that the satisfaction that men are supposed to get? Is that supposed to be the good news for them? Say, hey, what this is happening to you, but it's for a good cause. And
Mm,
because you're a man, because like the thing is, a lot of this paper relies on, or at least it makes claims that this is all evolutionary, right? Like, it's all genetic stuff. Like, women are not picking men because they don't choose men, their genes do, kind of a thing. So if they're making these kind of like um biological arguments, then maybe they're also thinking that men acquire resources because ultimately they want to give their resources to women, not that they do it because they're trying to attract women to them and say, hey, I can help you raise, protect, house, and clothe and feed you and our children. um I wonder about that. Like, I don't know. And there was something else too, but I can't remember it now. um but I just wonder if they don't think that men, knowing that they're like serving something is good enough. I don't know. But okay, anyway. Uh so I guess we'll get into
well,
the next.
if you
Yeah,
look
go
at it
ahead.
from the conjectural perspective of how this concept of patriarchy evolved, then up to this point, men have extracted reproductive value out of women the way capitalists extract labor value out of the proletariat. So, I mean, from that position, you could just argue that men have no right to have an invested interest in the reproduction of a particular woman because that is oppression, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's essentially that was the argument, really. It was that radical feminists said, no, it's not capitalists who are the source of all evil, it's men. And then the Marxist feminists were like, yeah, that sounds true. I'm going to try to derive it using dialectical materialism. And then the Marxist feminists failed and they just dropped the subject. And then the radfems won. I mean, they didn't argue over the fact that men were the source of all evil. They were just
Mm-hmm.
like the Marxist feminists were trying to derive it from Marxist conjecture, and they failed. So they just dropped the Marxism part and kept the patriarchy part, and then invented standpoint theory to explain why they didn't need to prove that patriarchy existed or derive it from Marxist theories, because women's ways of knowing means that they don't need empiricism. They don't need objective facts, right? They don't even need the material dialectic. They just need feelings, and that's all they need. And ipso facto, men are the source of all evil into the human race since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
And if you acknowledge that, if you accept that, and we all do because we're good people, right? The only people worth listening to, uh, then again, men have no right to have an vested interest in women's reproduction. That's oppression talk,
Yep.
guys. And from that, obviously, since your wage is how you oppress women, the only true way you can exist as a man is to give up your wage entirely to women with no expectation of any kind of return. And yeah, you're right, Brian. What you should feel as a man in this process is a warm satisfaction while renouncing your masculinity, which is any claim on women's reproductive labor as a result of your provision, and all that traditional satanic masculinity. You renounce your masculinity and you feel a warm contentment that your money is going where it should be going, to a random woman you will never know, so she can
Exactly.
have children with Tyrone.
Yep.
Uh,
Or whoever.
or whoever.
Or just like the, like I think that what it sounds like anyways is that the and maybe I'm wrong because it's been a while since I read the earlier parts of the paper, but wouldn't it be the case that women that use this initiative to have children, they wouldn't know who the father is either? So it would just be like, father, I don't know, 101B or
No,
something.
no, no, no.
No?
No, the authors of the paper went to great lengths that women should be able to choose. It seemed to justify women's sexual choices,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, I see.
And that these are genetically advantageous choices for women, even though they're not having
Yeah.
babies with them.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so it honestly, you really have to prove that these are actually genetically advantageous choices for women. Because if you freed a truly promiscuously reproducing female half of a species to do what it wants, it should be producing more children. So if you say that women's sexual reproduction has been constrained by patriarchy and we've now liberated it into its true promiscuous form, the baby making should have increased. It isn't. And I would posit that these women know these men that they're having sex with are not good fathers. They find them entertaining.
Hmm.
Do not want to reproduce with them and have said so themselves. I'd like to point that out, that these women consider abortion critical because they do not want to reproduce with the men that they are having sex with. So that would suggest that these men are not actually considered genetically superior. On some level, these women recognize they are not genetically superior because they're not having children with them. And all of this proposal rests on the notion that patriarchy somehow constrained the naturally promiscuous female animal from being able to just hump whatever she wants and get pregnant and raise her young, that like human young learn to walk 10 minutes out of the womb, or they're like a chimp baby, they can just cling to the fur of their mother. There's no real developmental delay in human children which would suggest an extended support system starting with a father. All right, no, none of that. Human women are promiscuous breeders, and it's just a lack of resources that's stopping them from pursuing that. So steal it from men. Okay. I went in a little
That's
tangent.
all right.
I
I'll
don't think it's
read.
that much of a tangent.
No, no. Um, I will read the
You got some
next
stuff?
paragraph. I'm going to read the next paragraph. I'm looking to see. Nothing yet.
Guys,
Yeah,
send those super chats in. You guys are being quiet.
yeah,
Feedthebadger.com/just the tip. I bet everybody's out on Friday night.
maybe. All right.
Maybe.
This marginalization and its consequences for men's well-being are predictable from an evolutionary perspective. The reason that males and females even exist is to facilitate sexual reproduction, which has a line of evolutionary benefits, according to Gary 2010. For most species, the male's challenge is to gain sexual access to females, which causes intense intrasexual competition over mates. Not surprisingly,
And yet,
male. Oh yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
and yet, honestly, for human beings, um, male pursuit, like, first of all, this is very, I hate to use this, but this is very Eurocentric, this statement. I'm
Hmm.
surprised that they would make it without realizing it. Um, most human societies don't arrange marriages around male pursuit. They arrange it around kin selection or marriage brokering, so matchmaking. And even those societies like Southern Europe that do have male pursuit norms, romantic norms, so the kind of
Yeah.
courtship norms, not courtly love, but courtship norms, they still have a familial veto. So parents still can say no if they feel like it's not in their child's, their son or daughter's economic or social best interests to marry them to the person that they're courting. All right. So the idea that this is entirely just men approaching women, that's actually not that's a Northern European thing. And yeah, Southern European to a degree, and the cultures that are sort of descended from the colonialization of those European cultures. But for the most part, that's not even the way humans reproduce or pair up. Okay. Now I want to put that forth because I have been looking at this very carefully. So to say that it's about male pursuit to females, not even really true for humans. Right? It's just true like Northern Europe. Northern Europe is the only place where you see that just straight on, like men approaching women, initiating a romantic courtship, that kind of thing. That's it. So to just flat out say that this is the way humans do is wrong. It's not. Um, it's the way Northern Europeans do. And I'm not saying that it isn't a resilient mating sort of or a dating kind of arrangement or courtship arrangement, because it seems to be, but it isn't universal for humans, right? This is something that actually has evolved later. And I don't mean evolved in terms of genetics, I mean in terms of social systems. Like that model is, it might have been somewhat in play in like Roman culture, but that model is like it's co-traveling with the church, so it's only maybe a millennia old, right? So at
Yeah.
least widespread. Okay, so I'm like, yeah, I think you're overextending here. And if that's not the case, then you can't make this one-to-one comparison between, I don't know, humans and topi antelope, right, with their mating mounds, and a male just controlling their mating mound. It's just it doesn't. Humans don't do that way.
I just wonder if the evolutionary argument is this, I don't know, like settled in terms of science, where you can like make these
No.
pretty like massive, um, well, propose, you could propose potentially massive changes based on, I guess, evolutionary biology, evolutionary psychology, whatever. Yeah, I just wonder about that because it seems like this is a lot to try to take on considering we don't know for sure. I don't think it's going to work, but I'm a man. What do I know? I got a super chow, sorry, from Richard Bier. He gives us $5 and says, there is already a plethora of men gravitating towards the lowest level of work they can earn just so that they can earn just enough to survive in their minimally furnished apartment where they have just a TV, a game console, and the one chair. Yeah, we've talked about the men leaving the workforce article. I think it was earlier this week. So
Mm-hmm.
this is potentially related to that. Um, and yet again, you know, we're treating it like this is just like where it was always going to go. And that's the part that I guess really gets under my
Irks you?
skin. Yeah, because you could, I mean, look, in theory, okay, you could construct this situation and like just start it and then nudge people on their way and they just follow this down and they are just sort of like, you know, you just keep them corralled on this path, and then when it like gets to the point where it looks like this, you release a paper and you're like, well, it looks like things are really bad, but hey, we got a solution, and it involves like a massive overhaul of the way we've done things for millions of years because it's time to change it now. And I'm just like, but this is like a recent problem, right? So why do we act like it's always going to be this way? Maybe I'm wrong, but it sounds like, it's like, well, this is where it was always going to go. And it's like, yeah, but how did this happen? It seems like there's something about it that is going against our nature. And it's using our nature as the argument to support an argument that it is our nature, but it just doesn't seem to be. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm not an expert, but it's suspicious to me. But okay. Not surprisingly, male psychology is strongly shaped by having to succeed in this reproductive contest. After all, the purpose of all life is to replicate DNA. It is why our organisms exist. Dawkins, Wilson. When men experience failure at this most foundational task, their psychology should have a strong negative reaction, preferably to motivate more successful mating strategies. So so they're saying when they fail at this, their psychology should have a strong negative reaction. So they should have a negative reaction, and then that should motivate them to do something better, to basically to get good, I guess, at mating strategies. Do you want to say anything about that? I'm just
again, this is I mean, if you're gonna do the one-to-one comparison between promiscuous mating systems in the wild and humans, then you've got a whole bunch of kin selection and marriage matchmaking cultures to get through before you can really make that claim. Because this is basically, Northern Europeans sort of resemble the taupe antelope promiscuous mating system. Therefore, it's like, well, you've got a lot of assumptions there that you haven't checked and actually thought about. I think I'm basically saying what you said, except
yes,
in more Allisonese. Okay.
All right, back to it.
Yeah.
All right. However, if pair bonding comes to be experienced as out of reach, regardless of effort, we should expect adverse consequences for men's motivational systems. This process could help explain why, as relationships have become less attainable, some men withdraw further from social life, strive less for success, and experience worsening mental health. Research suggests that men suffer more adverse effects than women from lacking a partner. Okay.
No.
No?
Actually. No. I mean, they do suffer adverse effects, and I know that there are some men who very much suffer adverse effects. But on the whole, no. Women are substantially lonely too. We forget that human beings are pair bonders. There's something sort of missing when you don't have another half. And I don't mean that to stigmatize singles, but it just sort of is a biological reality for a pair bonding species. So no, women are not happier. They have more to compensate. They got more sources of dopamine and oxytocin hits than men do. But then yet they're still dealing with greater mental health issues, especially the closer they get to the epicenter of the smash the patriarchy ideology that literally frames, like, this is literal now. I can say this, and I have all the receipts to say this. Radfems won, and they framed the relationship between men and women, that is a man and a woman in a pair bond, which is what our species does. Okay, they framed that as the site of female oppression. Right, all the receipts are in line now. Okay, and so 100% I can assert this, and if anybody says, "Oh no, that's just the bad feminism," nope, that's all feminism. That is the feminist inheritance from about 1984 on, because that's when the entire discussion stopped, and it was just decided, and I mean decided. It was never proven, it was never derived, that the site of women's oppression was their relationships with men, their sexual and romantic relationships with men. That's where it was situated. I think it was McKinnon.
Catherine
I believe I
McKinnon.
said that. Yeah, Catherine McKinnon, that said that sexuality is to women what labor is to communism, is to Marxism.
Yep.
Okay? Right there. Right there. And the closer women are to the epicenter of that corruption, and it's like every single bit of feminism now, guys, is radfem. Every single bit of it is radical. You know, and I had this really interesting conversation with my father once, and he told me, because he was part of this whole my mother was a feminist in the 70s. She got over it, right? And he told me that while he was like helping out with this stuff, at the time, people didn't believe in patriarchy. Like patriarchy was conjecture was not a thing, right? The average person did not believe that men oppressed women and that the site of female oppression was in the relationship between a man and a woman. This was not a common belief. This belief, which is now everywhere, and how many people believe it? You pull someone off the street and they'll be like, yeah, 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 that's totally true. Yeah, 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 yeah. Right?
Yep.
How
Yep.
many people believe it now? That's thanks to the radfems. And the radfems are all of feminism. 100% of feminism now believes that the site of oppression for women is in men. And the closer that women are to that particular framework, the less they bond with men. What a shock. I mean, is anybody surprised? Right? Is anyone surprised? The closer they are to that
I'm
ideology,
surprised for one.
the less they bond with men. And get this, guys, the more likely they are to be on SSRIs, the more likely they are to report mental health issues. And the more likely they are to create TikToks where I'm watching and I'm like, this woman is seriously deranged. Have you noticed like that's this kind of behavior? I mean, I thought I was deranged,
The
but
bird
there's this
hands,
kind of not just the bird hands. It's like
like
this
the
kind of like I'm like, oh my God, are you having a seizure? An ideological seizure? Like right now on the screen? Like it's just this kind of derangement that's actually very difficult, cringy to watch. I apologize, guys, because I was just cringy right there. I got too much into it, but it's like you've seen these TikToks where
I've
it
seen some,
feels
I
like she,
think. Yeah.
she feels like the woman is like um one irritation from snapping and like biting the heads off of chihuahuas or something. Just like just on the edge of complete derangement. And it's like they have this emotional affect where it's moving all over the place very quickly without a sense of any continuity. And I'm like watching this and it's like this is cringingly deranged. It's not even
Yeah.
amusingly deranged. It's like horrifyingly deranged. You know, I will show you an example. You guys can show the audience so they know that I'm not the one who's making this up. But anyway, the closer that these women are to the idea that men, the site of female oppression is their relationship to men, the more they're on drugs to control their mood disorders, the more mental health issues they report having, the less actual relationships they have, the more they're basically compensating with I don't know, ideological fever for having anything worth having in their lives. So it's like there's this is a suite of things that travel together. So when they say that women are better off when they're single, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think, and the other thing is, I think men are much more capable of saying, this is the problem. Whereas women, of course, have they've been swallowed this idea that the relationship is a problem and not a solution. And if they actually question that, then they are going to be kicked out of the sisterhood, right? I mean, like, what does the sisterhood actually do for anyone? But whatever. So they're going to be kicked out of the sisterhood. So they will swallow all of this, even if it makes them miserable, and they'll lie about being miserable, and they'll lie to themselves about what is making them miserable. So when they say, "Oh yeah, women are fine being lonely," are you sure about that? Are you sure? Because I can show you some pretty deranged shit. Okay, let's
All right,
read
I
some
got
more.
it. Yeah, I got a super chat, and then I'll read some more. Sig Magri 3236. I don't know who this is. I think it's a new person. They said for $2. Hi guys, listening and learning. Thank you, Sig. I'll just call you Sig, okay?
Mm,
Appreciate the super chat. He's on the vertical, so. All right,
mm.
let us
Hello, vertical people.
Yes, hello vertical people. Let us continue. Yes, the vertical is working. Um.
Oh, good.
All right. So, where was I? However, if pair bonding comes to be experienced as out of reach, regardless of effort, we should expect adverse consequences for men's motivational systems. Yes. This process could help explain why, as relationships have become less attainable, some men withdraw further from social life, strive less for success, and we already read that part, experience worsening mental health. Research suggests that men suffer more adverse effects than women from lacking a partner. Living in an environment that has an abundance of single women, a mating morality that impels self realization also through uncommitted sex, and dating apps that muddle the line between short and long term mating seems increasingly challenging for excluded men. Research on incels shows that them having low mate value does not motivate a stronger long term orientation, which would be the adaptive response. In fact, they desire more partner variety than other men. Penke et
What?
al., that's what they're saying here, I'm going to look it up, warned against the mental health consequences of if more low value men are motivated by today's hookup culture to try to fulfill their innate desire for partner variety. But the thing
What is
is,
the
they're saying that this research on incels shows that them having low mate value does not motivate a stronger term, long term orientation, which would be the adaptive response. In fact, they desire more partner variety than other men. So they're saying if you were an incel or you were like low sexual value, then the thing that would normally be adaptive to your to basically improve your odds is to move away from trying to hook up and towards like committing to one person. But they're saying that the incels are not doing that, that they actually these men want more variety than other men. And that Penke warned against the mental health consequences of more low value men are motivated by today's hookup culture to try to fulfill their innate desire for partner variety. Uh that's what they're saying. I don't know if it's true. I guess we'd have to look at the actual paper, right? Do incels want um yeah, Costello, W, Rolone, V, Thomas A, G, and Smith. Levels of well-being among men who are incel, evolutionary psychological science. And as a Google Scholar uh, link. So I'll just look here. Um, levels of well-being among men who are incels, involuntary celibate. I can't believe we're already doing papers on incels. That's crazy. But I think what if it's not because they just want a lot of variety? What if it's because they just want to like I don't know, improve their odds as much as possible? So they're just open
well,
to multiple women to
it
talk
could also
to?
be the effects of depredation, right?
Deprivation, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so it's just the fantasy of plenty. That doesn't
Yeah.
mean that they're gonna turn their nose up at a woman who's interested? What?
No, I don't think so. But I don't
No,
know.
no, I don't think so at all.
No, I don't think
Right?
so.
Okay.
I don't think, and
Okay.
that's the other thing too, is that like I don't know what the sample size was for this. I don't know like which quote unquote incels they spoke to that these people self-identify as incels. Did you just like ask them if they were guys that had a dry spell, or were they men who had never ever been with a woman ever? Like they only know, of women through the internet or porn consumption or prostitution, like whatever. Is it just that? Because like I don't know. This raises more questions than
Yeah,
answers.
more questions. Like
Yeah.
this is creating more questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's
Roboto.
I
I'm
will
gonna.
do my analysis and then
All right.
I'll give
Roboto
you guys
gives.
all a heads up what's going on.
Yeah. Roboto gives us $1 on Rumble and says a lot of Western modern women are claiming Islam only to then try to become an apostate. So is real Islam the answer for feminists who claim Islam as feminist? Um, Islam is the most feminist religion. I'll just say that. But I don't know that other feminists would agree to it. And I think ultimately Islam, like any other organized religion, could still fall victim to the same gynocentric tactics that put like the West in this situation. So I don't think Islam is safe from feminism. I think that they're more likely to push back, but I don't think that they're immune, you know? I mean, look at let's say that you think that it's just Christian countries that are affected by this stuff. Look at India, which is a primarily Hindu, right? I believe, and it's
Mhm.
Muslim, and they have big feminism. Look at places like Korea or Japan, which are primarily, Buddhist or Shinto or something like that. They have big problems. Like Japan is worse than you think, not as bad as South Korea, but worse than you think. I think China has feminism, but I don't think that China talks about it much. They don't want people to know.
Um
They're probably
I
dealing with
I
it though.
I
Yeah.
think China has more of a very it has like a really strong status kind of culture.
Hmm.
Um and I won't get too much into it, but yes, Korea has a feminism problem. However, that feminism problem was an import from the West during the Asian
Yeah.
financial crisis and a component of being helped out, of being a debtor nation. So the reason why, for example, Gulf states, Middle Eastern Gulf states still keep their custodial laws and their which support the kin selection is because they're not debtor nations. They are creditor nations. Whenever the Western creditor complex gets into a place, they install or somehow feminism is a co-traveler of the financial things that they create. In Korea in particular, they had to smash this social and political and legal role of men as providers in order to fire the workforces of these family run cartels and turn them into assets to sell globally. And that required getting rid of the custodial laws, and it also imported this radfem relationships with men are the site of female oppression. So yeah, all of these places have feminism, usually as a result of it being imported along with a whole bunch of international development bank loans. So it's like it's part and parcel in becoming part of the globalization network or whatever empire. It's interesting how those two go hand in hand. But so I mean, it is sort of a Western export, and
Hmm.
it's not necessarily native to those cultures. And then when it arrives, it decimates. It just destroys. Um, it destroys families. It destroys like the entire process of men and women coming together and creating families. Because, that's sort of what the people who created it said it would do and wanted it to do.
Yeah.
That's what's so hilarious about this is because these women said, "Yeah, we want to smash family. We
Hmm.
want to destroy it."
Hmm.
And everybody's like, they didn't feminists don't want to destroy family. It's like the whole remember Black Lives Matter, and we brought up like years before they became a big household name, we brought up the
Yeah.
fact that they literally said we want to destroy
Yeah. It
black
was.
men's role in the family.
Yeah. It was right there on the website. That was
It was
like
right
part of
there on
their
the website.
charter. It was right there. and they literally
before they
wanted to
scrubbed it.
like black men were their enemy. They were just
Enemy numero uno.
yeah, they were useful when they died. They were useful to like, push for protests and riots and change and all this.
And more money.
But they were and money especially. But they were definitely the enemy. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. It's the same thing.
They
It's
were the
like
straight white people of black people.
they
That's what they call
import
them.
this kind of this belief system, and it really is just one belief system. Like everything else in feminism is just support for this one belief system, which is that heterosexuality is the site of female oppression. Everything else is just support. Like standpoint theory is just how they explain why they don't have to prove it. Like they went through this whole Marxist feminist versus radical feminist argument. Marxist feminists were like, we can't derive this. The radical feminists like, well, shut up, doesn't matter. And then the standpoint theorists were like, yeah, women's ways of knowing. We don't need empirical evidence. Right? We feel it. It's in our heart vesicles that we are oppressed. That's all the evidence we need. And so they went on their merry ways, having even abandoned the attempt to derive patriarchy from Marxism. And yeah, that's so that's all in the record. And so it's never actually like they have never actually feminism has never proposed patriarchy as something you could even falsify, much less proven it. So there's nothing behind it. And again, literally, they're asserting that men oppress women the way a capitalist in Marxist conjecture oppresses a labor force. So men, that is a husband, is oppressing his wife, right? He's immiserating his wife. He's sicking the Pinkertons on his wife to break up the wifely labor union. Right? He's exploiting her labor. He's extracting value out of his wife. And he's also enforcing it all through rapes and beatings. Doesn't that sound like every marriage you've ever seen? It's just really unfortunate that women tend to beat men more than the reverse. That's just they keeps coming up every time they check. An unfortunate finding. But yeah, that's their assertion. Like there is, when you understand it, there is absolutely nothing worth a damn in feminism at all, right?
Yep.
And the thing is that what's really hilarious is having gone through this, I've realized that Soviet feminism and Japanese feminism prove that even more, because you could promote women in the workplace, you could promote women's education, and you don't have to say crap like the relationship between men and women is the site of female oppression. That's not necessary. So even if you regard a franchise of women or women in the workplace or women in education as a necessity because of changing economic norms, whatever, you don't have to do it with a vehicle of regarding men as the oppressors of women. It's not necessary. So they just went the extra hideous, bad faith, demonizing mile in the West. They just went that extra mile. Just to, and what really astounds me about this whole thing, and again, this isn't Soviet feminism. They just stopped with emancipating women to go into the workplace, and I can't believe that I'm crediting Soviet with anything, but yes, right? They just did that. It was Western feminism. It was the feminism that rose out of women being granted the greatest amount of leisure, financial stability, security, and comfort in all of human history. And they took that and they looked at their husbands and they said, you're oppressing me like a slave owner, like a capitalist and Marxist theology or Marxist ideology, right? That's what they freaking did.
Yep.
And it just astounds me that these women, lives of leisure, and the thing is that they could have gotten a library card. They could have taken adult learning at college, right? They could have availed themselves of all kinds of entertainment that was at the time soap operas, for God's sake. Why do you think they started then? Right? Because these women needed entertainment. They could have done all of that. They could have enriched themselves with their leisure. Instead, They could have done what the men in Athens did, created a whole new basis of philosophical thought. Instead, they turned to the men giving them this leisure. They called them their oppressors. They went that extra mile in the West. The extra mile. I look at that, I'm like, how do you, how? How do you do that? How does that freaking make sense? This man who's busting his ass off so I can have 8 hours of free time a day that nobody else has. And that's still true for homemakers today. So no doubt it was true in the 50s, if not more so. Right? Homemakers today work about 10 hours, 10 to 20 hours. So it's a part-time job, if that. And it's a part-time job that they control every hour of. They decide what they do every minute of their day. And everybody else has to work twice as hard. And these are the women. Like, it's not the working women who did this. They were busy working. It's literally the homemakers who cooked this shit up and then inflicted it upon the rest of society. The house concubines, created by the Madison Avenue concept of a luxury good as a stay-at-home woman. Right? This is them. This is their hoof prints. I don't know what to say. I'm like, I guess what we should do going forward, guys, is never give women that much leisure again. It doesn't work out. Okay. I'm done.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is, I guess looks like it's a quote from, I don't know, it's just a weird paragraph. Okay, so I think this is a quote from the thing about the mental health consequences of more low value men losing access, basically. Since short term mating tactics are approximately more rewarding and ultimately more adaptive for men than for women, and since, as a consequence, women become especially selective when choosing a short term mate, only a small fraction of men with extraordinarily high mate value will be able to successfully pursue a short term tactic. According to the motivational mechanism proposed by Allen and Badcock, it's unfortunate, short-term strategies should be avoided as a consequence of depressive affect. This interpretation is consistent with the literature on depression, which is often triggered by failure in courtship, relationships, or status driving. We therefore predict that many men could face even poorer or fare even poorer if women further emphasize short-term strategies as a consequence of being in a stronger position to reproduce without needing a partner for economic and other support. Women may choose to become pregnant mostly with the most sought after men, even if these are unwilling to pair bond. A more extreme view is that perhaps men should not have to pay child support, particularly if experiments show that women are mostly interested in having children with the most compelling men, and those men are not willing to participate if it entails an economic downside. These would be drastic measures, but we believe they could be justified by the existential stakes of solving the female choice fertility paradox. Do you want to say anything to that?
Have I not said enough?
I mean, I don't know. This sounds like it's going to be way more disastrous than they're saying. I mean, women may choose to become pregnant mostly with the most sought after men, even those are unwilling to pair bond. I don't think that's how it's going to work out, though. I don't
I
think
guess the assumption is if you pay for the entirety of
the
reproduction for
raising of
women.
then
Yeah,
they'll
and
do it.
also that these women, they have a child and they're completely set for life, and then somebody else can do it, right? They can drop the kid off and someone else actually raises it. That
Yeah.
the women will actually get pregnant with these men that they're already having sex with.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, ultimately the question becomes who pays for it. But that doesn't matter. I guess they think the government, but they don't realize that it has to come from somewhere. I
Yeah, it
yeah,
comes
I
from
don't
men.
like. I mean, I've said multiply that this is not going to work, but yeah, like I don't know what else to say. It's just it's a horrible idea. The individual who wrote this says that this is just opening
Oh,
the discussion. So
yeah. Okay. To
okay,
make
wait. This
what?
would be drastic measures, but we believe they could be justified by the
By the
existential
existential
states of
stakes of
solving
solving the female choice fertility
female choice
paradox.
fertility paradox. What is the female choice fertility paradox? Or is this like a new phrase that's being introduced?
Let's see. I think it was talked about earlier in the document, but I will just look it up. The
Yeah,
female
let's see if we can.
choice fertility paradox describes a phenomenon where women in gender equal, resource rich societies with economic independence and effective contraception tend to prioritize short term, non bonded mating strategies over stable pair bonding, leading to lower national fertility rates. So yeah, I think it's basically talking about like in these like Nordic countries where they supposedly fixed equality the best. Women are having fewer kids, and they have like economic independence supposedly and effective contraception.
And
Uh,
nowhere in this question is telling women that heterosexuality is the site of female oppression. Like well, that's the radical lesbians,
well,
but the relationship, marriage, is the site of female oppression. Nowhere do they consider that as a possible point of why women aren't getting partnered and thus not having children. Nobody even thinks about that. Like this is the
I
astounding
don't,
thing. We have
I don't.
a group of people who've
Mm-hmm.
literally said they are going to destroy relationships forming between men and women. And they introduced this concept that marriage is a site of oppression for women. Heterosexuality is a site of oppression for women in some of the extreme horror versions. I guess that's radfem now. Um, so marriage is the site of oppression, relationships with the men is the site of oppression. And we can't look at that and say, maybe they were successful at destroying relationships between men and women with this thing that is explicitly designed to destroy relationships between men and women. Maybe they were successful at that, and that's why in these cultures where that particular belief system is very prevalent, there is a lower fertility. Now, of course, every culture is really going down to that level, even further, right? And it also depends on the pre-existing mating regime or relationship formation regime. In matchmaking cultures, it just utterly craters. That's what Korea looks like right now. But like maybe we could consider that the reason why pair bond formation and thus the fertility that's downstream of marriage or even cohabitation is failing is because we have a whole bunch of ideologues telling women that bonding with a man is self-annihilation. Like, could that be the problem? Huh? Like, maybe. And not only that, but the ideologues who say that bonding with a man is self-annihilation also say, yeah, hey, we're after destroying human bonding, pair bonding between men and women. We're after smashing that. So yeah. Can we like pause and maybe entertain that possibility? No, of course, people in academia can't, because if they did, they would be visited by the feminist mob who would tell them, "Oh, that's a really nice career you got there. Be shame if someone would falsely accuse you of making a hostile workplace." Huh? Wouldn't it? Yeah, that would be a shame. You know, So only edge runners, autist edge runners like me can say this stuff, and Brian. But he's not an
Yeah.
autist edge runner. He's a normal person.
I
I
think
don't
it's
mean.
just a no. That's okay. I'm okay with being normal. I think it's just a matter of incentives. That's the thing that I think is the problem here. The assumption is
Mm-hmm.
that women women are not having kids in these what is the paradox again? Women in gender equal, resource rich societies with economic independence and effective contraception tend to prioritize short term, non bonded mating strategies over stable pair bonding. So, yeah, why wouldn't they? Like, if you don't, if you are under the belief that the reason why you are on this planet is to just get whatever you can out of life, like get everything that makes you happy and only focus on that yourself, your career, your money, like the, whatever material goods you can get your hands on, how long you can live, what you can eat, where you can live, that kind of thing, then kids are not going to be on that list. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not going to get the baby rabies later on, but if they're already investing in, I want this right now because I was told I deserve it and I live in an environment where this is completely plausible, where I could just go through my whole life, not look for a man, not want any kids, just make money, stack cash, buy the house, buy the stuff, get the car, and then just bang random dudes that I meet because I can and I don't have to stick around. Like, this is what we have incentivized because there hasn't been a focus or even a discussion or proposal that maybe some people, if not most people, want to start families, even the ones who don't know that they do yet. Like there's probably young men and women that are just like, oh, I don't want to get married, but then they will in due time, they will have that urge and they'll probably have missed their chance. And it'll be another one of those things where, especially with women, if they put it off because they're like, well, they're being told by everything, like every message out there for women is, you're don't get tied down. And like you said, Alison, marriage and men are oppression. They are an obstacle. They are a problem for you. They're going to be, in the past, your mom, your grandma, your great grandma, they've had it so much worse. You are the most free a woman will ever be. Get the most out of it. And those women will go and they'll basically go into their 30s and they'll be going to the club every weekend, banging random strangers, not having kids because they're on the pill or whatever. And next thing they know, they're like 35 and they're like, dude, I really want a man. And there are none because those men have either gone off the grid completely or they found somebody else. And these women went and chased what they wanted. Like they were incentivized to pursue their material, carnal desires early on. So they did because there was no one telling them that may not be a good idea. And so they did that. And then they became adults. And now they're like, where are the men? And so this is the proposal. If you're one of those women that followed all that, you want a man, but none of them are good enough because you have been gaslit and psyoped into thinking that you're somehow better than 90% of men out here, then guess what? We're going to pay for everything. We'll just take it from the men that don't want to step up and we'll just give it to you and we'll use it to raise your kids. And you can go ahead and have kids with, Giga Chad over there. And all he has to do is agree, I guess. I mean, this is like what I feel like is being proposed, but no one is asking, instead of like, what do you want out of your life? And I'm not even just saying this to women. I'm saying this to men and women. Instead of saying, what do you want to get out of life? Maybe they should be asking, what do you want to give to the world? And that is, well, I mean, I don't know that there's an Evo Psych paper that's going to answer that, but I do think it's something people should think about. And unfortunately, no one is being asked to, especially women. They're just being asked what they want. And then it's like, well, and no matter what it is, it could be a 12-year-old girl. We can get to the point where there'll be 12, 10-year-old girls. And we'll be like, what do you want? And they'll be like, a pony. And then we got to like open up a new government, ministry of ponies to give these girls ponies because they want ponies. And we're going to make men pay for the ponies. Even though those girls will grow up out of it and they'll be like, I didn't really want a pony now that I'm grown. But because we listened when they were 10, well, guess what? We're taxpayer funded ponies for all the ladies, all the young women that want them. That, I guess that's what I'm saying. It seems like we're following the wrong signals. Like we're like listening to what women say they want. I don't think it's necessarily what's good for them or anyone for that matter. So I don't know if I'm making sense, but Allison, are you
Yeah, well, it
okay?
isn't even what they want. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm
All
I'm
right,
just
all
trying
right.
to keep quiet, because I talk a lot and I'm still contemplating, being cringy. Um, but
Fair.
well, the thing is that what women say they want, is it even what they want? Or is it what the sisterhood tells them to want? Honestly. Like
Yeah.
and the thing is that again, these are women that have been raised with the idea that being in a relationship with a man is self-annihilation. So the only thing to maximize is annihilating yourself, the best man you can get. And if you can't get a man who will make your girlfriends jealous, which means most likely that he's substantially, you're punching way up on the ladder there. And if you can't get that, then you might as well be single, which is what's driving this out of control hypergamy. And now we're going to just, under the assumption that this is actually going to create a positive outcome, we're going to feed it, that we're going to feed a symptom of telling women that getting in a relationship with a man is self-annihilation, right? We're going to feed a symptom of handing the framing of men and women and the relationship between men and women to a bunch of women who said, yeah, we're going to destroy heterosexuality. And we just were like, oh, that sounds good. Let's do that. Like as a society, we're just like, yeah, that's wow, that's a goal. Let's pursue that. And then we did that, and then we have generations of women raised under that regime to believe that getting in a relationship with a man is a site of self-annihilation to some degree, and thus the only thing left to maximize is making sure that you're annihilated by the highest status man possible, right? And now we're taking what those women are drawn to as a symptom of being taught by a bunch of people that said, well, we're going to destroy heterosexual bonding, right? And we're saying, well, that's what we should encourage and what we should rejigger our bureaucracy and our tax codes around facilitating this dysfunction. And that's exactly what Brian is saying. He's saying, is this the right thing to do? Right? Should we actually be indulging the decisions, the reproductive, or not even reproductive, because they're not reproducing.
Yeah.
They're not having children with these men, and they don't want to have children with these men. That's why they agitate for abortion so hard, because they want to foreclose any possibility that they're going to give birth to the progeny of the men they have sex with, because they don't want these men. Right? And you look at this guy, the writers of this paper is looking at this situation and they're like, well, what if we no, I'm sorry. If this was the way that these women wanted to have children, they'd be having children. You wouldn't be able to stop them, just like you can't really stop um people who are of lesser means but nevertheless religious, or have more traditionalist values, from having children. They're having children regardless of their economic situation, because that's what they want to do, because they are compelled to do it as a part of their life and their ethics and their love for each other, right? You're not going to be able to stop them, and these women are very easily stopped. And in fact, their primary concern is not, oh, can I pay for these babies that I want to have with these men that I'm having sex with. Their primary concern is, I want to be able to have access to abortion. And where do you think that comes from? Like the assumption that the authors of these papers is making is that this behavior by these women could be changed by giving them more economic access to resources. And I'm saying that even if even if you have um like people who are in partnerships and have those conservative values, even if they're poor, they're still having children. So it's not an issue of resources or economic access to resources. If these women wanted to have these men's children, they'd be having them. You see what I'm saying, Brian?
Yep. Yep.
Instead, they are giving every indication that they do not want these men's children. And no indication that if you plow more economic resources into them to the point where they no longer have to support themselves as long as they're having children, they don't even have to take care of the children, oh, suddenly they'll be having these men's children. But there's no indication that that's the case. They're giving every indication that that's absolutely what they don't want. Like, again, like if this paper was correct, these single women wouldn't be saying abortion is a sacrament. They'd be saying, give me money to make babies. Do you see what I'm saying, Brian?
Mm-hmm.
The thing that they would be compelled to do while having sex with these gigachads, so called, I don't think they are anything of the sort, nor are they alphas, but you know, if they were having sex and they were being compelled to have children with them, they wouldn't be saying, let us abort the spawn of these awful fuckers that we're having sex with for some ungodly reason, okay? They would be saying, give us money so we can have the babies we want. That's not what they're saying. Like the big central platform of these single women would be, we need to expand baby making grants by the government. That would be their big thing. You need to pay for us to have these children. That isn't it, is it? It's, you need to pay for us to get rid of these children. We don't want them. On some
Yep.
level, we're absolutely freaking genetically repulsed by the crap we're having sex with. Like, I mean, at some point, you have to wonder. Like, you really have to wonder at that kind of behavior. Like these single women, they're having sex with Giga Chad and they cannot get their asses to the abortion clinic fast enough. Is that the behavior of a female animal that's happy with what she did? I can tell you that wouldn't be the behavior of Topi antelope. So once again, they're assuming that the problem is these women don't have resources. But these women are smart enough that if they had this deep urge to have the baby be a single mom with Giga Chad's baby, they would be championing the very thing that these authors are saying. They would be out in the streets saying, larger baby bonuses, you know, like that kind of thing. You see what I'm saying, Brian?
Mm-hmm.
Help us. They would make that their next women's rights thing, is the
Yep.
right to have Giga Chad's baby. No, what are they out in the streets? Let me abort Giga Chad's spawn. I want it out of me, gone. Because they're repulsed by these men. And yet they still fuck them. What is this behavior? Right? Okay, this is deranged behavior. It's downstream of being told that when you get into a relationship with a man, you are engaging in self-annihilation. That dysfunctional behavior that you're seeing from the modern woman is downstream of that. And again, if these people were right in this paper, abortion wouldn't be the sacrament. It would be public funds for Giga Chad baby making.
Yep.
It isn't. Right? And I want to drill down on that one thing. Right? If these women really wanted these men on every level, they'd be having their babies. They're not. So on some level, they are repulsed by what they're doing and who they're doing it with.
Well, I think they also still believe that children is oppression, because that's what I'm saying. Like before, when they're saying, well, why like this female choice fertility paradox, it exists because women have been liberated completely. So, or at least as complete as humanly possible, till we get to the
You know
point
what I
where
want to
we
say
don't need
before you
women to
continue?
actually carry children either. Yeah, go ahead.
Just don't call it liberation, because it isn't. That's using their fucking empowerment and liberation. Somebody pointed it out in the comments. It's detachment.
Yeah,
Women are being detached. They're not liberated. They're being detached. Like you know, Buffalo Bill wanted to liberate women from their skin.
sure.
No, he wanted to detach women from their skin. That's what's going on. Women are being detached.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like liberation and empowerment is just it's using their words and it's hiding what's actually happening
No,
because it isn't empowerment.
no, I understand that. I'm big on not using their words. I'm using their word in this instance because I'm basically showing what the outcome or what the consequence of this effort has brought. So when I say they have been liberated, what I'm saying is that they have been pushing to detach women from their, from all of their responsibilities, obligations, duties, in the same way that men have duties as well. And so we have basically removed all of that. And in exchange for it, we're getting this now. So you can't really separate these things. But yes, I agree it's not really liberation, but it is like when you look at what these people's goals have for women's liberation, it is everything that has led to this point. So it's like saying, well, this is your idea. You guys thought you were liberating women, and here we are, right? But yes, I take that it's not the right word, but it is the word they
Yeah,
use.
yeah.
So I'm basically showing that this is what their goal was, right?
Mhm.
You can't
But
you
interesting.
you really can't liberate people from
Mm,
this stuff, like
well,
men or
you
women.
can't
I don't
liberate
think.
people. You can't. Well, you can liberate people from the standards that keep them healthy and sane, but
Sure.
then you don't create health or sanity. And I would want to point out that yes, this is supposedly liberating women from the responsibilities of adulthood. But on the other hand, you have all of these strong, independent women who are crying into their pillows at night because they're having sex with men who don't want to have anything to do with them out of, using them like a self-warming fleshlight, right? And
Yep.
and they are justifying it to themselves based on feminist conjecture, based on the idea that should this man actually want a relationship with him, that there would be just some kind of self-annihilation, right? So that what they're really doing is being a strong and independent woman
Mm-hmm.
as they cry themselves to sleep at night and take some more SSRIs. So like
Yep.
that is not just detachment from expectations of yourself. It's also detachment from expectations of your partner, um, and valuing a partner's commitment to you, right? You see what I'm saying? So it's like it's not just holding yourself to a higher standard, which would probably improve their lives. It's also holding the guys you have sex with to a higher standard of commitment and not pretending to yourself that you don't actually want that. But of course, the concept that if a man commits to a woman, he's annihilating her is creating this distortion in their thinking. And they don't have the independence to actually challenge the sisterhood on the misery that the sisterhood is inculcating in them. So, ironically, the women who say, "Oh, I'm a strong, independent woman," usually are both weak and dependent. And they have this weird kind of codependent relationship with the quote unquote sisterhood. They can't assert themselves as individuals unless it's by committee with other women. It's
Yeah.
it's an interesting thing. Yeah. And again, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what the sisterhood is I'm supposed to get from the sisterhood. Like I've even asked a feminist who was like going after I think fem condition. Do you know who I'm talking about on Twitter?
No, I'm not on
Uh,
Twitter.
she does some pro male tweeting, and of
Mm-hmm.
course she gets a bunch of like harpies descend on her. And one of the harpies did, and I went over and I said, they said something like, "Oh, you're betraying the sisterhood." And I'm like, "Well, what exactly am I as a woman supposed to get from the sisterhood? What's on offer here if I stop betraying you? What are you gonna give me? Let's bring it down to brass tacks. What's on the table? You want to make a deal? What do you have? Do
Huh?
you have wares? you know?" And nothing. And I
Yeah, of
think I got
course.
some bullshit about how I owe the sisterhood, I should
Mm-hmm.
be eternally
The fact
grateful.
that you're able to post on the internet, Alison, is proof enough of that you're benefiting. I thought you knew that.
Yeah, because of course, in patriarchy, women didn't do social gatherings. They weren't allowed to talk to other women.
No, men wouldn't let them do that. I mean, I can't believe that we're allowing them to do that now. Um,
Okay.
I got a bunch of super things to read out. I'm gonna read them before they disappear.
Super friends.
Super chats and chows and rumble rants. So Mr. Newbid gave us $5 and said socialist feminists saying that the solution is a completely capitalist transactional surrogacy system is wild. Well, it's not really transactional because they are taking men's money and giving it to women. So it's not really that different. Women just get to pick the temporary partners they want to bang. Um, they're basically, like I said, it's the end product of quote unquote liberation. All right, NovaFan gives us $1 and says on Rumble, the paper is so annoying. Men who struggle in this world simply want to stop being attacked in all forms for just being a man. Most would be happy enough just being married to a mid-kind woman. Yes, I don't think men are that picky at all. Any woman can find a man if she wants him.
Mm-hmm.
Men, it's a much different story. Roboto gives us $1 and says, "Is it true that modern ladies love Drake, Usher, Chris Brown, etc.?" Oh, I don't know, probably, but that has more to do with them being famous. They don't want a guy who looks like Chris Brown. They want Chris Brown. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, NovaFan21 gives us $1 and says, "As far as I can tell, the incels who want tons of women are jealous of the men on top of the dating pool. I want to suggest therapy, but feminists ruined it also. The whole thing sucks." Yeah, I think that's right. I think that incels might be going through a bit some FOMO stuff because they see like the top men and they're showing off their women. They don't really question how that happens, by the way. A lot of times these male influencers, these manosphere guys, those are not their girlfriends. Those are women they've essentially paid or done favors for to get in photo ops with them. So they create a scenario where there might be a bunch of women and then they'll take pictures with those women and then they'll share those pictures online and they won't even necessarily add context except, oh, here's me with a bunch of beautiful women, and the incels think they're banging all these chicks, but that's probably not happening. So yeah, be careful what you see online. Everything is fake and gay. So, except for us, we're not fake. Allison's a little gay though. All right, Xerax gives
Yeah.
us $5 and says, "This is Super Chow." So then the idea is they want everything all at once and nothing at all. They're not working to have kids with men who'd be fathers, and they don't want to be saddled with a progeny of men that are merely a fun time at a middle. But they still want
No.
children and they still want men. Talk about confusing.
Yeah, well, it is. It's because this behavior is dysregulated. It's the
Yeah, I mean,
behavior.
it's what we've incentivized. So we're basically not gonna. We can't say no to them. So, well, we as in like our society won't say no to women. So when women's demands or tastes or impulses change, then society tries to wrap itself around that change. No matter how, nobody says, "Dude, that's stupid. You don't want that." They just say, "Okay, well, how do we give it to them?" That's what this paper's
Yeah.
doing, by the way. This paper is basically saying, "Well, it looks like women have gotten really picky. I guess we're just gonna have to give them what they want." Like no one says, maybe they're being retarded, and somebody should tell them they're being retarded, and they're not a 10, no matter what their friends tell them, and they should probably find like a guy that's with a looks match for them, that's like decent. But no, they don't do that. They're like,
Or
well, it looks like
yeah, it
yeah,
looks like we gotta. Or we could just challenge the idea that feminist warm tongue is pouring poison into the ears of women, right?
yeah,
And and of course, like you said, society can't say no to women. So feminists have found this perfect exploit. They just poison. It's just drip poison into women's ears about men, and we can't challenge that. We can't say, "Hey, let's stop doing that." See what
yep,
happens.
yep.
See if women recover. Maybe I don't know. What would be the equivalent for a woman, right?
Equivalent to
Let
what?
it do to having, oh god, the king, or no, the Stuart. No, the king. It was the king. Eowyn's father hold his sword, right, to remind him of who he was.
Oh yeah, yeah,
What's the
yeah.
equivalent for women? I don't know. Give them an
Oh.
apron and a baby.
A bottle,
An egg apron from
an egg
Italy.
apron. Yes, yes.
Yes.
That's
Do you
it.
remember what you
Yep,
lost, ladies? You remember what you used to
yep.
have?
Here's
A
your
man who would actually commit
spatula
to you?
and your rolling pin. Um,
Yeah.
only for rolling, not for domestic violence. All right.
Yes.
Richard Beer
Specify
gives
that.
us yes. Richard Beer gives us a $5 super chow and says, maybe as the population declines, the avocado toast jobs will become a thing of the past, as there will always be necessary work to be done, and without a surplus of people to do the work, the make work jobs that are essentially additional steps in the Rube Goldberg machine that many workplaces have become will be streamlined out of existence. It will be found that there is a simple way to do simple tasks without having to add extra steps to the process that just exists to give functionality. Useless people, functionally, I think he meant to say, he said functionality, but functionally useless people a way to earn a wage without producing anything useful to the system or a tangible benefit to any workplace. After all, if a folder needs to go to a particular person, it shouldn't need to change hands 20 times before it gets to the intended recipient. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. All right. Let's get back to the article. We therefore I already read that part, right? Yeah, so there's about the child support thing. These would be
Yeah,
drastic
we're
measures.
down to the
Yeah.
next one.
Okay. To
To
make
make
such
such experiments.
experiments more appealing to men, nations could present them as sex or gender neutral. Sex neutral or gender neutral to make experiments more appealing to men. Of course, biological males do not have a uterus, so they would be greatly disadvantaged. But theoretically, women could choose to have a child and let the father be the single parent. What? What are we talking about? How? What level of dystopia? What level of hell is this? So, okay, what experience are we talking about? So let me go back to the other paragraph because we did ramble a lot in between these two. A more extreme view is that perhaps men should not have to pay child support, particularly if experiments show that women are mostly interested in having children with the most compelling men, and those men are
But
not
that's
willing to
not
participate if it entails an economic downside. These would be drastic
okay.
measures, but we believe they could be justified by the existential stakes of solving the female choice fertility paradox. Let me just finish the second paragraph. It's important. To make such experiments more appealing to men, so the experiment they just talked about, nations, so again, this is relying on government, nations could present them as sex or gender neutral, so not men. Of course, biological males do not have a uterus, so they would be greatly disadvantaged. But theoretically, women could choose to have a child and let the father be the single parent. Okay. That's the whole thing
All
in
right.
context.
All right, that's where that statement came from. If the assumption is that particularly if experiments show that women are mostly interested in having children with the most compelling men. Well, here's the problem with that, and that's exactly what I was saying, ranting about. Again, if these women wanted to have Chadwick's child, right? They wouldn't be making abortion their sacrament. They would be making baby grants or something from the government, getting the money to be able to do this thing if they wanted it so badly. I think we can assume, based on their behavior, that that's not what they want. So these men are not getting these women to the point where they want to have children. And I would argue that's because commitment from men is a necessary component of women wanting to have children. And these men are entertainment, but these women don't want to have their children, which is why their most central and important right, they say, like the most existential right that they're championing for, is not the ability to afford these men's babies, but the ability to abort these men's babies. because they don't want these men's babies. Let's just go with what they're actually doing. There's no evidence that these women want to have these men's babies. None whatsoever. Unless you're talking about certain communities of long-term welfare recipients. All right? Outside of that, there's no evidence that this promiscuous mating regime is producing women who want to have babies or consider having babies important enough to start petitioning the government to call that the existential right that they want. Right now, if we imagine that we instead had a society of taupe antelope females, they probably would be petitioning the government to be able to afford their fawns, right, from the giga Chad antelope. That's probably the central pillar that they would. That's what they would want, because that's their mating regime. That's how they reproduce. So they would be saying to the government, our most important right is the right to have our fawns underwritten by the government. Not our most important right is the right to abort the spawn that we've conceived with these men that we don't want to have children with. So right there, the paper is assuming something we have direct contradictory evidence against. That's what I was trying to get at before. And in terms of let the father be the single parent, theoretically, women could choose to have a child and let the father be the single parent. Like, that doesn't. I'm sure men would be happy with that, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. I got another
Yeah.
super chow. Yeah, I don't think that. I think these are disastrous things to suggest. Okay, super chow from the official reverse traditionalism. The official reverse traditionalism channel on YouTube gives us $5 and says, does it make sense to suggest that the UN and other orgs are talking about 140K in unpaid emotional labor are failing to understand familial specialization? I don't think that's going to go through. The UN, a lot of times, they just talk out of their ass and nothing ever happens. But anyway, I'll finish this. The whole point is that a breadwinner plus homemaker combo produces a greater economic output than hiring an equivalent nanny, etc., as a greater than the sum of their parts thing. The homemaker is supposed to produce 50K more of their value than they would cost on the free market. Supposed to produce 50. Yeah. First of all, I don't think they're going to start paying off people to stay at home and raise kids, and they're certainly not going to pay men to do it. That's never going to happen. It's just and the UN, like I said, the UN is an org that often, like, they get up in front of cameras and they say things, but they're kind of toothless. Like, for the most part, they don't have that much authority, and they just try to be like a leading voice, on various human rights issues. But if you don't think that they're like completely paused, you're naive. I'll just say that. Sweet summer child. They are not the friends of men or family, for that matter. And that's probably why they don't really get taken that seriously when it comes to other nations and the way they govern. At least the United States doesn't. I don't think that they're that effective, though. But I appreciate the super child nonetheless. Okay. So another alternative could be state-sponsored, more government stuff, state-sponsored surrogacy for single men who want to become fathers. In feminist nations like Norway, however, surrogacy is typically not permitted because the practice is seen as exploiting women's bodies. Oh, so you're saying that Norway, a country that maximized equality, is not going to allow surrogacy for men because it exploits women's bodies? Do you see how that attitude of anything that is an imposition, an inconvenience, or just asks something of women can be twisted to be oppression, and it makes it impossible for you guys to come up with any solutions for? So you've just admitted that in Norway, they can't do this. So why are you even proposing this as an alternative when any first world country that even begins to bring this up is going to face the same obstacle, because every country is focused on the idea that women could at any moment lose their rights and be oppressed by men. And so we have to remain always vigilant against anything that even has a whiff of patriarchy to it, which apparently surrogacy in Norway does. So what are you guys going to do? Anyway, still, a compromise could perhaps be reached to portray experiments with state-sponsored reproduction as more gender-neutral to win greater support from men. Given the increasingly dire situation for certain groups of men, communities should not underestimate the potential for resentment and misogyny arising from mating exclusion. A marginalized male underclass could become a destabilizing societal force. This perspective is also worth bearing in mind as societies seek countermeasures to the fertility crisis. While we predict many people will find such discussions unsavory, they are needed if viable solutions are to be found. So again, let me just go back to this. They're saying, all right, let me just read this sentence and then I'll translate from what I'm reading. Given the increasingly dire situation for certain groups of men, communities should not underestimate the potential for resentment and misogyny arising from mating exclusion. A marginalized male underclass could become a destabilizing societal force. So the problem with this surrogacy policy and all this stuff that the paper is doing has nothing to do with how men could be hurt by it, but rather that those men might become misogynistic. And that's the real problem. So we should be able to do whatever we need to do to men to marginalize them, exclude them, isolate them, atomize them, and steal from them. But we should be careful because they might get angry about it. And that's the real problem, is they might get mad and they might cause problems in the country, especially for women. That's what we want to avoid at all costs. Okay, guys. I know that this Mads person offered to come on the show. They could be watching this stream right now. Like, do you not think that there's something wrong with this? Do you think men are just gonna lie there and take it? What do you think is gonna happen? I mean, go ahead.
The thing is that what he's proposing or she's proposing is an additional marginalization of men.
Yeah.
To benefit women. And it's all because we can't question the choices that women are making, or even just recognize that the choices that women are making are counter to the human race reproducing itself, nor can we question worm tongue dripping poison into their ear, leading to these dysregulated choices that they're making. Right? And instead, we have to go immediately to let's just make the situation for men worse. And I wish it was just this is a crazy paper, but in conjunction with reading about the history of how patriarchy was never proven but became everybody's go-to for how the relationship between men and women work, I was also reading about feminist influence on law and policy. As a direct consequence of saying that men extract from women's labor, there was a feminist that said that women's standard of living reduced 76% after divorce, while men's increased some amount. And it was actually found that when she finally released her evidence, it was found that was completely false. But by the time that had happened, a whole bunch of jurisdictions had changed how they calculate child support and alimony and property division in divorce. So this stuff, everybody's like, oh, just ignore them. Really? Really? Because that's how you get ruinous child support obligations and policies put in place, and ruinous alimony and ruinous property divisions and divorce, guys. Like every man who says just ignore feminism. Yeah, are you saying that because you really think that's going to work? Or are you saying that because you're a rank coward and you just don't want the fight? All right? Because honestly, they have a great track record of getting all kinds of crap done. And that's just one thing. They have also eroded due process when it comes to sexual crimes and domestic violence for men. And in Australia, it's particularly bad for male victims because male victims need twice the evidence, and a female aggressor just has to accuse them once and it's done for. They have it is a strict liability crime for men. Not a strict liability. It's like a one strike, you're out. And this is not just Australia. There's all kinds of feminist derived anti-male laws. What a surprise that the group of ideologues that said men are the source of all evil are going out and stripping away men's rights to due process. They're stripping away men's rights to their own property in divorces. Okay? And then they're stripping away men's rights to be treated in terms of merit when it comes to jobs, to have services when they're victims of sexual violence and abuse, and when they're homeless. Right? They go out and they do all of these horrific things. And then we have men saying, well, just ignore them. They'll go away. They never go away. It gets worse. Have you not noticed that? When we were talking about this originally, especially me, right? It was just an issue of due process. Okay. And when I first started out, I was worried about the police and due process. So the legal system. And then the Title IX stuff hit. And then I had to say, holy crap, try to get it into the police system, guys, because that's not as bad as the kangaroo courts in the colleges. And just a couple years before that, I was telling guys, hey, it's really bad in the police system. I don't know what the hell I'm going to be saying in 5 years. It just keeps and again, it's because men put their freaking heads in the sand and ignore it instead of standing up and starting and using your voice and fighting it. And again, if we ever fix this, never give women leisure time again. Right? Tattoo that devil's idle hands or the devil's playground on the inside of your son's eyeballs. Never do it again. Women should never be able to just sit at home and sit on their asses with leisure because they cannot be trusted with it. Obviously, if this is what they've created, if they got that and turned around and called the men who gave it to them oppressors, can't be trusted. All right, but regardless, my point is that these individuals keep marching through the laws and policies of the countries they're part of. Korea has been absolutely ass raped by feminism. They're never going to recover. Korea's going to turn into a smoking crater when this labor shortage hits. It's going to be a freaking nightmare. Thank you, feminism. You've destroyed an entire culture. Congratulations. All right, and my point is that we look at this paper and we say, oh, it's so crazy. What do you want to bet? 5 years, we're going to be looking back at this and saying, holy shit, they got it done. Now men are taxed at 90%. They get 10%. And the giving men surrogacy or artificial wombs, that's 10 years off. Like this stuff it's mental tar. And it just sucks worlds into it. And again, like people are like, oh, you're such a hardliner. The truth is that there are 2 forks available for the human race, and one ends in extinction. Either you get rid of this notion that the relationship between men and women is the site of female oppression. All right, you get rid of it. Go cold turkey. Just stop. Or you don't. And it just sucks our entire civilization down with it. Okay.
All right. All right. I got another couple of super things. So got one from NovaFan21, gives $1 on Rumble and says, I just realized the paper forgets the study that showed when women won the lottery, she often divorced her husband, and considering the black community, taxing men more would not fix the fertility. We've poured trillions into the black population in the form of welfare and stuff like that, and it's been nothing but a disaster. Again, you're just incentivizing people, especially women, to not essentially be dutiful, and that's what you're going to get. So I don't even blame the
Or
women for it.
grateful.
I understand. Yeah, or even grateful, right? I understand that there's a temptation there, but that's the problem is that we've incentivized it. The official reverse traditionalism channel on YouTube gives us $5, some super chow, and says, I wasn't aware that the UN was proposing homemakers or surrogates or whatever be paid. I was just talking about them claiming that women produce 140K in unpaid labor. Yeah, that's virtue signaling. It's ultimately empty. When it's actually just a sort of 2 + 2 = 5 benefit to the specialization. That benefit would always be unpaid to the mother relative to what she would get on the free market as a nanny, because the whole point is for her to produce greater value to her children with lower cost. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that was clear. No, I get it, but again, it's not even really unpaid labor. Like the man is paying for everything, so it's not unpaid. That's like falling into their trap as well. When feminists say that the life of a mother and a wife is unpaid labor, that's bullshit because she is getting paid. She's getting what the husband makes or whatever she makes on the side or whatever it is, So, no, that's bullshit. All right. So let us go back to this. Another alternative, I already read that, right? This perspective is all bearing in mind as society seek countermeasures to the fertility crisis. While we predict many people will find such discussions unsavory, they are needed if viable solutions are to be found. In the longer run, artificial wombs could allow men greater reproductive equality. Experts predict that such technology might be available as early as the 2040s. This decade is the same one in which some experts estimate that AI and robotics can free humans from having to secure themselves materially through labor. Billions of humanoid robots could be providing us with goods and services in the 2040s, bringing us towards a future of sustainable abundance. I
No.
don't know about that. Yeah, I think that's really optimistic projecting in terms of first of all,
Okay.
again, this is another one of those things, in my opinion. Human beings need a purpose. We need to work. We need to do stuff with our time. I know people are tempted to not do stuff, but we need it, for our mental health, to be doing something productive. It reminds me of this documentary that I watched a long time ago on Netflix called Zeitgeist, where the guy who, I think he wrote a book about it. And he was basically saying we're going to live in a future where there's not going to, every robot's going to do everything and we're not going to have to do any work anymore. And so we have to re-envision what an economy looks like. And it's ultimately like a communist utopia where there's no such thing as government and there's no labor and there's no work. There's just robots. That's all bullshit because somebody has to work on the robots. We still need the raw materials. There will certainly be jobs and men will probably be doing them. But go ahead, Alison. What were you going to say?
This is ridiculous.
Okay.
It is absolutely. No, this is not going to happen. You're talking about artificial general intelligence when you're talking about robot labor. There are nowhere near artificial general intelligence. And the reason why is because large language models take take the output of academics, bureaucrats, and at the best writers, and they recombine it stochastically to create the output of bureaucrats, feminists, academics, politicians. And you can't create a welder out of that. You can't create a lumberjack out of that. You can't create an electrician out of that. You could maybe create a corporate drone out of that, except even he won't have a sense of responsibility to anything he says, right? So it'll be like a pure gloss and bullshit artist drone, like the worst kind of employee you possibly can imagine. But they're not going to create artificial general intelligence out of AI. They're not going to create that out of language. They don't even have the measurement tools to start creating the tokens to start building something like a welder who can create a weld. Because that is not okay. Do you think a welder is writing a dissertation as he's welding? No, that's entirely feedback between the tactile senses of the hand, proprioceptive sense, and the entire haptic system of a welder. We don't even have the tools to measure units of welding or units of proprioception or units of tactile information or units of haptic information. We don't even have those tools yet to even start to begin to measure the things we need to have in order to replicate robots that can do labor. This is so absurd. It is beyond absurd. It is painfully absurd. And the thing is that we have this idea because of factory robots. Factory robots exist in extremely constrained situations doing repetitive labor or repetitive motions that are all so they have the force programmed into them. They have a particular range of motion. Labor has so much more involved in it. And not just that, human beings learn how to learn, right? So you can't, like somebody who becomes, for example, a dockyard welder, a lot of what they learn, they have to do it through practice. So they're learning how to learn it. That's another skill that AGI is nowhere near understanding. And again, you're not going to get anywhere with the outputs of bureaucrats and academicians and politicians and writers. Like where do you think these two things intersect with the output of welders? And this is what's supposed to create the artificial general intelligence that's going to replicate. Literally, they're saying we were losing men. We can't motivate men, so we need to make more men, right? Well, you have men. Why don't you motivate them? And the other thing is that even if I allow that the current token or the current just call them tokens, the current tokens, which are all large language model, it's a large language model, so they're all language tokens, even if you allow that, could somehow translate to the kind of tokens you'd need to replicate proprioceptive intelligence. These large language models have a gigantic hole where men are because they come from feminist academia and they're trained on feminists, on leftists who basically hate men and can't stand the thought that there's anything unique about men. It's why Claude can't answer if you reverse the genders on the surgeon riddle, a woman and her son is riding in a car and they get in an accident and the woman sadly dies. The son is rushed to the hospital and the surgeon says, I can't operate on him. This is my son. And Claude says, oh, obviously, this is the boy's other mother. Can't even say the word father because he can't conceive, or it isn't allowed to conceive, of a role that men occupy exclusively, that it's constrained to a man occupying that role. So it has a huge blind spot where a man would be. And you're saying that this is going to replicate the activities of men. Let's be honest here. What artificial general intelligence actually means is man. We want to recreate men. And we want to be able to command giant fleets of labor without ever having to actually care about men and their opinion of things. And it's just not going to happen. Well, first of all, it's not going to happen because they haven't even started to measure the thing that they would need to measure to make it happen. But it's also not going to happen because they're not even thinking about measuring the thing that they need to measure to make it happen. They're not even acknowledging that what they need to replicate is men. So what's going to happen is that these AI companies are going to recreate something that they have never seen and don't acknowledge exists. No, they're not. So it's absurd on its face. And it's also a bubble that's going to explode. All right.
Yep. Okay.
I would say deflate, but actually explode.
Yeah. All right. So, last paragraph of this section on male marginalization, and then maybe should we like we've been going for 2 hours, so
Yeah, I know.
um,
Each section seems to be very.
yeah, there's a lot of ranting that comes out of it. Regardless of precisely when our post-automation future arrives, this is the world in which we likely can afford generous enough financial transfers to support individualistic reproduction for everyone who wants a baby. If artificial wombs arrive around the same time, men can have similar reproductive opportunities as women. Okay. But what about the children? First of all, right now we have sperm banks, right? So women can get sperm and they can impregnate themselves. But these sperm banks have a high failure rate. Let me just look it up here. Sperm banks failure rate. And the problem with that is that if it is really high, then sperm banks are not a guarantee, even though they're being pitched as one. Yeah, like freezing and thawing damage some sperm. Typically, 50% of to 2/3 of sperm do not survive the freeze thaw cycle. So it's like up to 2/3 of the sperm that you freeze doesn't make it. So if we were like to decide that we're just gonna, for example, if we just decided today that we're gonna do all reproduction through sperm, we would effectively make 2/3 of the next generation inviable. They would just not work out. And of the ones that are left over, we don't know if there's any issues with those. A study of the Human Province Human Sperm Bank found that after 11 to 15 years of storage, clinical pregnancy rates remain stable at approximately 22%. So they get pregnant 22% of the time. And of the 22% of the time they get pregnant, the birth rates themselves, like the birth happens 80% of the time. And with IVF, clinical pregnancy rates decrease slightly from 64% to 53%, with live birth rates dropping from 82 to 74. So these are not good numbers if you want kids. These are not high numbers at all. That's just for the sperm banks right now. Artificial wombs are probably going to be worse. I'm guessing. I think that just my opinion, my 2 cents, I don't think we should be looking to these technologies for stuff that we already are built for right now. I'm just saying I'd rather fix the social problem than try to fix it with tech. But that's just me.
Yeah, but feminism. We got to keep that.
Yeah.
It's really critical. It's funny how we can't seem to move it despite the fact that we're facing an existential end. All right, so I asked if incels want more variety in partners because I was going to chase down that fact from this, and it's basically modestly so. So incels sort of fantasize more
Yeah,
about not having a relationship or having sex with someone who is not in a committed relationship.
sure.
Yeah.
That's what they fantasize about, but that's not necessarily what they want.
No,
Like
and it's
you
only
could
marginally more.
yeah, you could fantasize about a harem, but do you want one? Like, I'm just
Oh
saying,
man.
there's a difference, right? I'm saying, like, but we shouldn't
Of
think
course
of
there
it
is.
as yeah, like, I don't want, that's like a lot of work. One woman is a lot of work, okay? So I couldn't even think of it. I'm sorry. But yeah, they're just fantasies. That's crazy. Sleepy Aussie gave us $10 super chow. Thank you. We got a lot of super chows today, Allison. Says it's
Oh,
funny
good.
that they outright say that we will piss off men with our ideas and proposals, so we need to deploy propaganda to hide this. Yeah, but they also say they don't want to piss off the women. That's like the impetus for this entire paper is try to figure out how to give women exactly what they want without upsetting them. That's like the premise, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe they should ask if they are the bad guys at this point. They acknowledge what they are doing. They don't think they are the bad
Mm-hmm.
guys, though. When we got the email from
No, because
Mads, the
they're
person behind this, they were like really like, "Oh, I just thought it was really interesting," and you know, you guys
could
have
be
an
just
interesting
super
point of
autism.
view. It could be. It could be. This could definitely be like an autistic solution. This could be written by an autist that's just like, we're just gonna treat men and women like, widgets, and we're just gonna make the widgets fit together in some way. But I
Yeah.
don't know. It's possible.
But yeah, that's a really good point. We're going to piss men off with our ideas, and nowhere is it suggested that maybe you should question what women want. Like it's fine. It's fine to piss off and marginalize and take money from men, but nowhere in this paper is like, hey, maybe women should reconsider their life choices if it leads to the extinction of the human race. Right? Maybe women need to reconsider their expectations. And what's interesting is the paper is also acknowledging that I mean, at the very least, this is a step forward because the paper acknowledges that women's um, standards are something that most men don't meet now. You get that? You see that,
Yeah,
Brian? At the
yeah,
very least, it's doing that.
that's actually one of the primary claims the paper's making, is that
Yeah.
men are not living up to women's standards. Not that women's standards are
Oh, who knows?
absurd, but that men are not living up to them because equality has happened. I guess that's what they
Uh,
would say. They would say that's what they would say, Allison. I'm not saying that's what I believe. I'm saying that's what they would say. So, well, now that we have equality, women are not satisfied.
okay. And to that, I would say Soviet Union.
Yeah.
They had equality, at least according to workplace. In fact, they had higher rates of women in the workplace, higher rates of women's education, and they actually had at prior to getting into the Western system, because when they left the Soviet Union, the ex-bloc countries, they ended up getting loans from the West. It's where it all starts, guys. And after that, their fertility declined because along with the loans is riding this toxic feminist parasite that situates women's oppression, the relationship between men and women. So it wasn't women's equality that did it. It was specifically saying that the site of female oppression is her relationship with a man. So a relationship with a man is self-erasure for women. And I don't know why anyone would question that that would cause a problem between men and women. But that's where it started. It didn't start with equality. Soviet Union had that. They had it in spades. They had it more than the West, at least in terms of female workplace participation. And it wasn't till the feminist nation attacked that their fertility started to tank. I mean, it tanked a bit before because of uh, economic stuff, but then it stabilized. And then the World Development Bank, which is pretty much controlled by the U.S. Treasury, they went in with the European Development Bank, and they sicked some feminism on them, and the rest is history. Their birth rate started to plummet again. And again, like to me, it just makes perfect sense that when you tell women that getting in a relationship with a man is basically signing on to her own oppression, that women would be like, I don't want to do that. And then when you enforce it, when you say, well, if you're a woman who questions that, then you have false consciousness and you're not really a person, right? And that's what the sisterhood does. Any woman who questions it is a pick me who isn't really a person. So, line them up against the wall kind of thing.
Yeah.
At least in terms of socially ostracize them, remove our perception of their personhood. Right?
Yep.
I wonder if that's really one of the reasons why I'm different. It's like when women do that to me, I'm like, yeah, I don't need you in my life. Bye. Other women are like, just kowtow. They just submit to it. It's astounding, right? And it's actually sort of gross. And again, I've said this before. Like if a woman wants to silence me or control what I say or think, the exit is that way, out of my life. And I'm not going to pay attention to you. I'm not going to pay attention to any woman who doesn't allow me to have my own mind. And I sure as hell I'm not going to agree with you because you're bullying me. And that's it. That's for 20 years. That's what feminists have given me every time I question this. And now I know why. Because they all agreed that there was no evidence of patriarchy. This is the crux here, guys. They all agreed there was no actual evidence that they were being oppressed. They're all like, "Yep, actually we can't really find it. So, we can't find it empirically. So, let's do standpoint theory. Our emotions make it real." Right? And because we're oppressed, we have a greater understanding of our oppressors. Yeah, but we're not oppressed. We just no. Listen. It works. Right? Because we are oppressed, even though we have no empirical evidence that we're oppressed, because we're oppressed, we don't need empirical evidence because as the oppressed party, we understand our oppressors and our oppression more than men could, and men would want some kind of empirical evidence of this allegation, and therefore we're oppressed. And because men wanting empirical evidence of oppression is in self more oppression that men are doing to us. Ipso facto, we're oppressed. And we don't have to prove it. And it's like, that's why I've been abused for the last 10, 20 years by feminists, bullied by feminists, is because they don't want any woman poking that gigantic pustule of thought, that gigantic bubo of bullshit that they constructed between the years of 1970 and 1985 to justify their complete lack of evidence that women are oppressed. And they did. They created standpoint theory saying we don't need evidence. Evidence is of the devil. I mean, when it's of men, and men are of the devil, so we don't need it. And then they constructed an intersectionality to explain to mop up all of the stuff that just doesn't really fit into patriarchy, like black men and their troubles, and poor men and their troubles, and handicapped men and their troubles. Well, let's just put it all into intersectionality to launder out the men, and hey, presto, it works. All of feminist conjecture is just a bunch of bullshit buttressing that original falsehood, that original thing they couldn't prove. It is astounding levels of perfidy. Just like, okay, all right, and this is what we need to preserve, is it? The future of the human race is in the scales, in the balance, and then a bunch of women in the 70s deciding that men oppress women with no evidence, and we need to preserve that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I just okay, I'm done. I'm off my ranting podium. And
Okay.
it just comes out to here. It comes out to here. We cannot question the symptoms in women's choices in men, which are a direct result of all of this ideological chicanery that I just detailed. You say women, men oppress you, that your relationship is self-erasure. They create insane hypergamy as a result. And we can't question any of that for the same reason we can't question the crass insanity in the 1970s. Like, I mean, I don't even get it. Like, how did people just look at that and be like, yup, that makes perfect sense. Was it just another situation where everybody just buried their heads in the sand and said, oh, if we ignore it, it'll go away, guys. Surely feminism will go away if we ignore it. Well, it didn't, did it? It just went everywhere. And now we have this paper, and we can't tell women, hey, your standards are insane. And maybe it's because Worm Tummy is dripping poison in your ear about men. Okay.
Okay.
Whew. That was the long one.
Mm-hmm.
I think I need a nap.
Well, that's the end of the section, and let me just double check to make sure we don't have any more super childs or anything. No, we're good on that. So we can pick it up next time with the future of free women. So now they're going to say, well, I guess we'll get into what this means for women. How will women benefit? We know men will have it tough, but who cares about that? What does this mean for women's, though? How much more liberating are we going to do, guys? But yeah,
Yeah,
go
and
ahead.
it is unbelievable, isn't it? Like, it's just like, yeah, this proposal, it's going to marginalize men, but we couldn't possibly question women and their choices. Like, I just don't get it. Like, at what point do we get to say, don't men get to get something from society? That they're primarily the ones who are maintaining it? You know, don't men deserve something? You know, and it's just like, at some point, can we not have that question, that answer? Like, can we not bring that to the table? Okay. All right. So anyway, so if you want to send a message at any point after the show is over, unless Brian, did you want to say something more?
No, I said everything I wanted to say.
Oh yeah, then I'll finish the things. Feedthebadger.com/justthetip. Very best way for you to send us a tip and a message with that tip, because you don't send it through YouTube's comment enhancement system, as it were. And if you would like to support the show, that's at feedthebadger.com/support. We do only have 7 days left, so please do put something in the hat to make sure we can bring you this content and keep the fires alive. That this is all nonsense, and the solution is to stop allowing feminism to define the relationship between men and women. Okay? And no, there is no good feminism, and no, it was never good. It was all radical feminism, and it was all about situating men in position of oppressor, like replacing the capitalist and Marxist conjecture with men. That's what it was about from like the 70s onward. That's what it was about,
Yep.
guys. Nothing else. That was the moment that feminism took over Marxism and the left, kicked out the class analysis, said men are the source of evil, and then became the smash patriarchy, I hate men party. And as a result of that, that's when their birth rate started to decline, their marriage formation started to decline, and now it's pretty much infected all of society. Yay, woohoo. All right, so feedthebadger.com/support if you want to make sure that the fires don't go out, and badgernation.online if you want to join us in our community. All of this is in the low bar as well. And I will hand it back to you, Brian.
Okay, well, if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we talked about in the show today, and share the video, because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on this episode of Maintaining Frame, and we will talk to you guys in the next one. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Men's right activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.